and welcome to the 5th episode of Total Pop Mode. We're a weekly gaming podcast. My name is Will, and I'm joined here by my good friend, co-host, and fellow gaming enthusiast, James.
What's going on, you hula hoop hoarding hedgehogs?
Good to see you, James. It's always good to be back once a week. We're sat here recording again, ready for another episode. Episode 5, I'm feeling pretty good, considering that I haven't had a bite to eat all day, and I'm currently getting through a can of cider, which is the first thing I've had to drink today, other than a coffee. So we got caffeine and alcohol flowing in the veins.
I know we're on a podcast right now, but at some point we need to have a serious conversation about your health. In the last 3 weeks, right, we've had fueled by 9 espressos because you were tired.
Yeah. I forgot to have more coffee actually before this. I was going to have more coffee, but I forgot to. The cider made me forget.
Oh, you didn't even remember what alcohol it was either.
No. Yeah.
The beer, cider. Booze.
You can expect a big crash somewhere around this sort of like later second third of this episode.
Well, that's better than the first fucking 5 minutes like last time, isn't it? Oh dear.
Oh man. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pop Mode. We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pop Mode.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
Or you can find me at Hoodafunk on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Hoodafunk.
And you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under Mr. Bames_TPM.
With all that said, James, I think we've rambled on long enough. Let's get on with the show. It's time to get on with our weekly catch-up. Okay, James, well, as you know, I've been busy with the challenge this week, so why don't you kick off our gaming catch-up?
Not a problem, man. Much better week this week, so I actually did manage to play some games.
Nice,
Not a huge variety, I must say, because one game in particular has basically sort of taken centre stage. But I'll give a brief mention to Thymesia.
I was going to say, I wanted to hear how you've been getting on with that. It sounded like in last episode that you were basically on the cusp of completing it.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. And as of this episode, I am still on the cusp of completing it.
On the cusp of completing.
However, I am more on the cusp than I was before. So in the last episode, I had maybe 2 or 3 subquests left to do, and then what I assumed would be the final boss.
Okay.
As of now, I have 2 bosses left, and that's it. One of them is an optional boss at the end of one of the subquests, and one of them is the final boss of the game.
Is the optional boss tied to an achievement of some sort?
Yeah, it is, yeah. And also, if you I know I'm an achievement whore, but regardless of that, I want to beat all bosses. Like, I always like to do an all boss run for the first run so that you sort of learn it all, right?
I think that if they're tied to an achievement as well, they're clearly important enough. They're not a mini boss or anything like that. So yeah, it's worth your time, it sounds like.
Exactly, and I believe all of the bosses are tied to an achievement in this game. It's just that to get completion, you don't have to do all the subquests, and at least 3 or 4 bosses I can think of off the top of my head are behind subquests rather than in the main quest itself.
Wow, that sounds really, unique, and they've actually put a lot of thought into it, unlike Miyazaki's hacky Elden Ring, just sticking mini bosses everywhere at the end of any old dungeon.
Oh yeah.
No item pickups or anything like that.
Are some of them even mini bosses, really? Are some of them just the bigger enemies or the same enemies?
They're just a casual mob with a long health bar in Elden Ring. It does get to that stage.
Like, if I'm being honest, the first sort of boss most people fight is probably Leonine Misbegotten, right? Down at Morna Castle, is it?
The very first fight.
One of the first bosses, yeah. One of the first bosses most people will fight is probably Leonine Misbegotten, right?
It is, yeah. But only after the very first boss, which literally is just a mob guy with a long health bar.
You mean the Godric Soldier boss?
Yeah, the Godric Soldier boss.
Yeah. Are we really calling that boss? I mean, it hits a health bar, right? But it's still dead in 3 hits or whatever.
Yeah.
But that Leonine Misbegotten is just a mob by the time you get to, like, the mid-game.
Yeah, that's kind of, that's a bit of a recurring thing in the Souls series as a whole, really, isn't it? That they all have a boss that then returns. But I think the issue that I was more describing there, and of course I do jest, because I've got a lot of love in my heart for Elden Ring.
Yeah, and FromSoft in general, we should add.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the kind of thing I was describing there was more about bosses that are actually not worthy of being bosses even. They should just be a regular guy sort of thing.
As opposed to something like Shadows of Yharnam, where it was a quality boss, but then just happens to be a mob later on as well.
Yeah, that was handled a lot better. But, you gotta, we've talked about it before, but, the scope of an open world game and stuff like that. You'd be expecting a lot of a company to flesh out an open world game in the same kind of curated, handcrafted way that something like Bloodborne or Sekiro has been put together.
Yeah, and to be fair to FromSoft, they did it fairly well for the most part. There are loads of repeated bosses, sure, but most of them are in the caves and dungeons. They're not really significant, if that makes sense.
No, that's true.
And I can respect it if it's that.
Well, right off the bat, we got completely sidetracked there because we were talking about Thymesia.
we were indeed. But yeah, that's really all I've got to say, to be honest. I have fought the 2 bosses that I have to beat, and good amount of challenging them. Definitely the 2 hardest bosses in the game by, I don't want to say some considerable distance, because I did struggle with the very first big boss, if you like. But I finally got it, and then it just clicked, and it was fine. Whereas I think these last 2 bosses might require me to actually learn the parry mechanic.
Okay, right. You're finally... Yeah, I know you're not keen.
Well, no, I'm keen. I just prefer dodging.
Yeah, there's quick stepping, isn't there, in this game as well?
There is a quick step, yes. But what I didn't appreciate with the parrying mechanic in Thymesia is that when you parry, you actually do damage to the person. So it's almost akin to a counter attack, which is, funnily enough, I'm going to talk about again in a sec in a different game.
Right.
But I didn't realise that. I thought it was just you sort of similar to Souls, you just parry and it just negates damage or something like that.
Yeah, maybe gives you a window for a critical hit or
exactly, something like that.
Yeah.
But no, it turns out that there's actually damage involved, which can actually lead to much better combos, and particularly with the way that Thymesia works in terms of you have a basic health bar and then there's an underlying health bar which is called wound, like when they're in a state of being wounded. And you have to then use a different attack to get that down, and that regens over time. So it's a way to stay on the front foot whilst being defensive, and similar to most things, it's just a timing exercise. It's kind of like Sekiro in the sense that you have to time it with the enemy attack.
Okay, yeah, no, that sounds fun. Yeah, I mean, Thymesia definitely sounds like a title that I want to give a go. It really, I think that it'll probably be one of the games I pick up fairly shortly, just given how much you've talked about it.
Well, yeah, and to be fair, 20 quid's a steal. It is short, though. That's the only thing. I mean, I'm 2 bosses away from 100% completion, not all achievements, but 100% of the content, and I think I'm about 8 or 9 hours into that file, something like that.
Yeah, that is one thing I've heard about the game. It's it's put together by a small studio, and I think that the price reflects the experience, really. Absolutely. Sort of thing. Yeah.
So no, for 20 quid, an absolute steal. But again, I won't talk any more about that because I didn't actually fucking finish it. But the main thing I've been playing this week has been Steel Rising, which obviously I've spoken about the last couple of weeks.
Yes. You didn't quite have time to put any hours into it last week, but how did it go this time round?
It's been an absolute delight so far, man. It's got the normal Spider's charm, which is essentially decent graphics, but some of the character models, when they're talking, look a bit janky. But I'm about that. I don't mind it at all, because the story is normally good enough in Spider's games that it sort of carries it through. And in that regard, so far, it's quite a hook. I mean, I am only about 5 hours into a playthrough, so I'm sure that the story will develop as it goes, and I'll be able to make a better judgment on whether overall it's good or not. But so far I'm enjoying what it's putting down. For a first foray into a Souls-like game, the combat's very smooth. There's a very, very, very nice variety of weapons, usual sort of choice between a strength build and a dex build, but it's called power and agility.
Okay. Are those your 2 main stats? How do you level up in the game?
So it levels up in a similar way to a Souls game in that you collect souls, but I think it's called anima or animus.
Okay.
And when you get to a certain threshold, you can then level up a stat once, and then each time you want to level up, it's a higher cost each time. There's, I want to say, 6 stats, which is power, agility, and alchemy. It's called alchemical something, but alchemy we'll call it, which is your strength, dexterity, and arcane.
Okay.
And then you've got durability, vigor, and engineering, which is health, endurance, and armor.
Okay, so they're kept it simple then. Pretty, just pretty much your casual, regular old stats for a game like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there was a lot of variation to the weapons and things like that. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so each of the 3 attacking stats that I've just mentioned there has their own weapon, and similar to Soulsborne, they have affinities and they scale with the stats differently according to that. I've actually started again a couple of times because I've tried out each starting class, if you like. The magic weapons are really fun. You're just a little bit too weak and there's not quite enough range on them. The ones I've tried anyway. Because you start off with sort of like almost like police batons, kind of.
Oh right, like a just a beating stick.
Kind of, but you hold it as if you're holding the side bit of the handle, and then you can sort of
like
flip
an
around
actual
with
truncheon.
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
But you
right.
sort of like flip around and do stuff. But it's really close range, really quick attacks, but really close range. I then went for a power build, and I was using a halberd initially.
Nice, good range.
Very good range, but very slow. And then what I've settled on is an agility build, and you start off with steel fans, but I'm currently using some claws. But to actually answer your question in terms of variety of weapons, you've got things like halberds, as I mentioned. There's a hammer, there's fans, there's dual wield blades. So I think one of them's called a falchion and saber, and one of them's a dagger and foil. Of the two I've found so far, there's sort of chained balls that you can throw at people and then do combos like that.
Oh yeah, okay, like kind of like a what do they call that? Like a flail?
It's not quite a flail. It's more like a wrecking ball on a crane in a way.
It's just.
But you're holding
right.
it and imagine you're throwing it at someone and then it
like
retracting it back.
Kamiko from, I think it's Kamiko from Kill Bill.
God, it's been so long since I've seen that film. I don't remember, but yeah, no, it could well be, man. But but it's pretty fun. I'm just trying to think of something. There is a gun.
Oh wow, okay. What kind of, like pistol, shotgun?
It's kind of a rapid fire pistol, the one I found so far, but yeah, it's very limited into like there's no magazine as such. You collect these things called alchemical bottles, alchemical jars, alchemical something.
Yeah.
And they essentially work as your ammo.
So they're your Quicksilver bullets.
Yes, but they also work with melee weapons as well, and it allows you to do the weapon's special attack.
Right, okay.
So, for example, with the halberd that I was using initially in my strength build, its special attack was a ranged attack. So it would essentially, you'd spend an alchemical orb, I'm just going to call them that because that's what they look like on the screen, and you'd essentially get to fire off some shots. The saber and scimitar that I referenced, or falchion that I referenced just now.
Yeah.
That one's special attack is a twirly blade attack, similar to the Diablo 3 the Barbarian when you do the whirly blade thing.
Oh yeah.
It's not dissimilar.
Now
to
I know
that.
Exactly what you mean. Just hit me with the Diablo 3, baby.
I should have just said whirly blade thing, then you'd have known.
Whirly blades, yeah.
But yeah, so there's things of that nature. But it's not everything, because some like weapons that have a shield or a counter attack. See, beautiful symmetry,
yes.
what we were talking about earlier. They don't cost anything to use. So my main weapon that I use is a set of claws, because they scale with agility to an A affinity when you upgrade them once. And obviously I'm going agility, so doing that. And the other reason I picked them was because their special ability is counter attack, which is parry, but actually does damage to the enemy as well. It takes their force, deflects it back, and then you actually knock the enemy over.
Does it open them up for attacks, or?
Yeah, it completely staggers them, knocks them to the floor. Also works on bosses as well, but doesn't knock them over, just interrupts the attack and you get a free attack in.
Nice.
So yeah, it's been really fun. I've seen a lot of Steam reviews sort of saying there have been optimization issues with it. I haven't found that personally.
But you do have a kind of top of the line graphics.
I was going to say, but admittedly I'm rocking some quite good hardware, so probably the wrong person to ask. Yeah. But yeah, man, so far I'm really liking what it's putting down. The setting's really cool. It's kind of France in the era of Marie Antoinette and King Louis XIV. But there's robots.
But robots.
Yeah, so it's really cool. Obviously, I want to save my big thoughts on it for when I get further into the game and stuff like that. But so far, really enjoying it and very, very pleased to, because as I've said a couple of times now, I do have a soft spot for this developer / publisher, because I'm not actually sure if they're the developer or the publisher, but Spiders, I have a soft spot for them and their games. So I'm really glad that it's not been a disappointment so far.
Cool. I mean, everything you say about it makes me more and more interested in it. I got to say, when you mentioned the things like the well, we've spoken previously about the steampunk aesthetic that it's got going on, and you did mention that there's a pistol, so I think that that's probably likely to develop later on in the game. I wouldn't at all be surprised if there's more sort of firearm weapons. If they're having that steampunk theme, then I can quite easily imagine some sort of rifle or some sort of blunderbuss looking thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, I'm there for it.
Possibly even a hand cannon as well, because some of the enemies have sort of got hand cannon type jobbies, so...
Well, you'd love to see it.
Yeah, I know how much you like a cannon.
I do love a cannon.
Yeah.
Is there a similar mechanic to Dark Souls where you kill the enemies enough and they will have a chance to drop their loot, weapons, armor? Is there anything like that? You do play as a character, don't you? Are you able to change your outfits?
You can change your armor sets, you can change your weapons. I do not believe that you can get enemies dropping their specific equipment.
Oh, okay.
Enemies do drop items, but it's typically the alchemical orbs that I've mentioned. You have your healing item, like an Estus, but it's called an oil burette or something. And you can get sort of mini versions of that from enemy drops, but they don't give you a straight regen of health like in one hit like an Estus would. It gives you a regen over time, which can be really handy.
Yeah, but it also isn't a quick rescue if you're in trouble sort
Absolutely.
of thing. That's not the... Yeah.
No, so you can you can hold loads of them, but they're never gonna say, like, if you got hit once and it takes off 3/4 of your health bar, you'd have to pop one of them and then run around like a madman for 20-30 seconds avoiding everything.
If you were going to compare it to Dark Souls, it's like a life gem, not an Estus.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to describe it.
So, did you have any final thoughts on Still Rising?
Not at the moment, man. As I say, I'm looking forward to giving it some more time. I'm very much enjoying my time with it so far, and hopefully I'll have some more interesting anecdotes to tell you in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure that we'll pick this up again in some of the future episodes. I'm looking forward to hearing how you're going to crack on with it. And yeah, in the meantime, I'm going to sort of pay a bit more closer attention to the game myself now that it's actually out.
Very much worth it, in my opinion. But how about you, man? You've been mainly playing Arborea, I know, this week, but...
Yeah, I've been hard at it this week. Hard at the grind. Honestly, in terms of a gaming catch-up, it has literally been Arborea. But other than that, I did want to bring up something that I'd mentioned to you earlier on in the week, and I did want to quickly bring on to the podcast, which is Pal World, which is a title that I think I caught wind of maybe roughly a year ago, and since I shared it around with a group of friends. I shared it with you just earlier on in the week, expecting that I'd already mentioned this to you, actually. But Pal World, there's an element of Pokemon going on there, absolutely. You do seem to collect pets. It's quite a sort of a cartoony, bright, vibrant world. You know, you can't deny the sort of similarities visually to maybe something like Genshin Impact or Breath of the Wild and things like that. But then alongside all of that, there does seem to be a sort of a whole animal slave industry thing going on. There seems to be some sort of evil oppressor where you can program these things, and instead of to be your pets and your buddies and they'll also fight on your behalf, you can just apparently like battery farm them as well. I don't know. It looks like it's absolutely all over the place, James. I mean, you watched the trailer just earlier this week. What do you have to say about it?
I have to say that I know very little about what this game's going to be. It seems like it's trying to do everything.
I don't think anyone has any idea what this game's going to be other than the Power World developers themselves.
Well, if they even fucking do, if I'm being honest with you, man. I mean, like you say, the opening bit of the trailer was like, okay, this is a Pokemon clone. It's going to be a creature collector, bit of trading, bit of battling. Lovely stuff. I'm here for that. It then turned into Animal Crossing for a little bit.
Yeah, there is definitely a farming element going on there. Absolutely.
It then moved into a little bit more Stardew Valley because it looked like you could actually craft items and sell them as opposed to just farming stuff. And then it became fucking Call of Duty.
Yeah, all of a sudden you can jump on your cute teddy bear and it pulls out a fucking Uzi and just starts gatting fools.
Exactly.
Like, where does that come from?
It makes no sense. And, you know, I was getting some serious Fortnite vibes because of the cartoony atmosphere and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also the third-person perspective to the shooting as well. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is some Fortnite vibes going on there. What is this game,
It's
man?
like, what is it? Is it going to be Second Life and it's just like you do a bit of everything?
Is it the next biggest MMO? What's happening?
Exactly.
I mean, it's really impossible to tell what is going on from the trailer, other than the fact that it appears to contain all of this content.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest with you, I'm not even convinced this game actually exists. Part of me just thinks this is kind of like, you know those ads when you click on like like a TikTok video or a YouTube video or something, and they show this mobile game where, I don't know, they're like pulling pins and the dude with he's got to save the woman and you got to melt the monster with the lava but not melt the gold.
Yeah, I know the exact one you mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm slightly suspicious that that's just what this game is. They're just showing me all the things I want to see. They're just teasing me along, and I feel like I would honestly think that this was a fever dream if I hadn't had friends confirm this, as well as actual proof on the internet that this thing apparently exists, or at least appears to exist.
Well, I share your skepticism, man. It seems like they've literally thrown all of the shit against the wall and all of it is stuck, apparently, because they're trying to put everything in.
Yeah.
But the worst thing is I'm kind of here for it.
I'm absolutely here for it. I was since day one. Send it my way, please. Yeah, no, it looks really, really fun.
I mean, you know, I'm a massive Pokemon nerd, so that instantly gets me sort of a little bit, oh, hello. something that's Pokemon but not. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
rubbing my hands together with glee, I am. To then have a fucking Stardew Valley / Battle Royale type jobby with
I
it.
know what is going on
It's
there,
like-
man. Oh my
Like
god.
Pokemon and Animal Crossing Stardew Valley, I see the synergy there. That works for me. You can
Yeah,
catch certain mons that you could fucking have like help you plow your fields and whatnot.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
times. That works.
Good shit. All good. Totally all above board. Seems standard game.
And you know, I can also see a Stardew Valley type jobby combining with a Battle Royale maybe.
But then all of a sudden, Pikachu pulls out a fucking bazooka.
Yeah.
And fucking Nidoran has an Uzi. Like, where does it go from there?
Pikachu actually has a move called Zap Cannon.
Zap Cannon. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing
Can
Zap
Pikachu
Cannon
learn
ends
Zap
up in
Cannon
Power
actually?
World.
I don't know.
I've got no idea. You're the Pokemon
Yeah.
nerd.
It's an electric moving Pokemon. I don't know if Pikachu can learn it though.
Probably then, I assume. He must be able to, right?
If it were that simple, mate, not every single electric move can be learned by every single electric Pokemon.
But he is like the series flagship Pokemon pretty much, so
Oh, the
I
mascot,
would assume he's the Mario of the Pokemon world sort of thing. He gets everything.
Interesting fun fact, it was originally going to be Clefairy.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I would have assumed it would have been something like Eevee, you know, kind of the other one that's been pushed forward more. But Clefairy, really? Wonder what made them move on.
Well, I can tell you, it's because they didn't,
Oh.
apparently, they didn't think that boys would think it was cool enough, because it's
Ah.
pink, basically.
Yeah, and it kind of represents like a maternal figure, or is that the evolution where it's holding the egg?
Oh, that's Chansey you're thinking of, mate.
Oh, right, gosh. Okay, I'm showing my
Yeah.
Pokemon
No,
illiteracy.
Clefairy's like meant to be sort of from the moon, I believe.
Right, yeah, I remember you could evolve her with the
Yeah,
Moonstone
that's
in
it.
the original.
Becomes
yeah.
a Clefable, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they went for Pikachu because it's sort of cute enough that girls would like it, but also cool enough that boys would like it too. That's the rationale behind it. Which, you know, from a marketing perspective in the mid to late 90s, I get. But,
Yeah, I mean, I think it had wider market appeal, so...
And I mean, they kind of fucking smashed it, didn't they? So who am I to say they're wrong?
Hey, but I'm sure that there's more than a few Clefairy lovers out there anyway. I'm sure that they're in the Clefairy camp wishing that it had taken the front seat. So Ash would have been rocking around with the Clefairy then instead of Pikachu.
That's apparently the theory, yes.
Fair enough. Huh.
But no, going back to Palworld though, it is an absolute shower of shit in the best possible way, and I really am looking forward to seeing how it develops because,
Yeah.
as I say, it's bonkers, but I'm here for it.
There's a bunch of trailers out now available on YouTube. You can go check them out. I mean, I would love to hear what people actually make of this game. I'd love to see what people think of it. You know, drop some comments in the YouTube channel. You know, because I really want to, really want to hear if people are looking forward to this game, if they're like me and they're not even quite sure that it actually exists, or whether they think that actually there's just far too wide a net to cast and they're not going to do any of these things particularly well.
Greatest prank of all time if it doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, crazier things have happened. For quite some time, I mean, I was convinced that Elden Ring was some sort of fever dream, actually, because, like, that just seemed to get announced, and then we heard nothing for so long, and then obviously the hype came in just before release, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
I honestly just started to wonder whether that game was even coming out at one point.
Yeah, because it was sort of like you hear that George R. R. Martin's involved, and it's like, oh, wave of hype, nothing
Yeah.
for months.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, a screenshot. Oh no.
Or some leaked, just a tiny bit of leaked footage of some, like, PS4 gameplay.
Yeah,
or
exactly. And then
something.
people are like, no, that's just Dark Souls, mate. And it's like, yeah,
He's jumping, can't you see? He's jumping.
exactly. But no, so hope, man, if it comes off with that Elden Ring hype when it comes out, and imagine if it's really good. The
It
upside's
just takes
huge.
off like Genshin Impact does or something like that.
Ah, well, you know, hopefully it's better than Genshin.
Genshin Impact, I know you don't rate it very highly, but it's a massively, massively popular game. It's doing so well, absolutely pulling numbers.
Not disputing that at all. I just hope it's better than. I mean, I played Genshin. It's fine.
I mean, on face value, it looks like Palworld has a lot more features that appeal
Exactly.
to me in Genshin. Much as I do like to collect waifus and femboys, I think that actually really kind of collecting Pokemon and farming with them and then getting people with a fucking Spas 12 shotgun
Yeah.
sounds like my type of deal.
I also like to point out, I didn't mention it at the time, but I really enjoy the imagery of a Nidoran with an Uzi.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
good
Well,
shit. I like
you
it.
won't have to wait long. It is due for release in 2023. Note that there is no actual month to that release date. They are kind of staying with a very nebulous date of 2023.
Yeah, so probably means it'll be 2024.
Yeah, I was just about to say, we kind of discussed before that, you know, absolutely leaves room for it to be delayed indefinitely. Who knows? Like I said, I'm really not convinced that this thing actually exists.
Do we know what platforms it's meant to be coming out on?
Um,
Because if it's a mobile game, I'm instantly turned off. I won't lie.
Well, it's actually already on Steam at the moment, so I mean it's coming out on PC at the very least. Yeah, it says it's also Xbox Series, Xbox One.
Oh, so it's going previous gen too.
It says it's for the Xbox Series and the Xbox One, so yeah, I guess it is going previous gen, yeah. Okay, so I think that's probably enough talk about a game that we're not even sure actually really exists. It's probably time to move on to a bit of current gaming news. This week in gaming news, the UK regulator, the CMA, raised concerns about fair competition if the deal between Microsoft to acquire Activision Blizzard were to go through. So, as discussed in previous weeks, Xbox's Phil Spencer made a statement where Call of Duty will remain multi-platform for the foreseeable future. That wasn't enough for Sony though, as we discussed in the last episode, saying the agreement about this wasn't good enough. As reported by Games Industry, regulators in the UK and EU will now further scrutinise Microsoft's plans as the firm never responded to its initial concerns. So again, this sounds like the Phase 2 investigation that's now taking place as a result that Microsoft didn't, not only did they not provide enough evidence, it just sounds like they didn't respond whatsoever. I really think that they reckon they just have this in the bag, and I've got to say, I agree with them. I mean, Xbox kind of has every right to do this. They made these smart decisions, they made these business moves, and they're well within their right to restrict a title like that. I think that Sony's always benefited from its own exclusives, and that's been the main selling point of that console. Microsoft, let's be honest, in kind of recent years has failed to deliver on their own sort of exclusives from studios that are really going to sell consoles and bring people in. If anything, it actually feels like they've been actively dismantling their older IPs like Halo and Gears of War, some of the more recent releases. So yeah, I mean, they badly need some wins. So these acquisitions of Bethesda, of Activision Blizzard, they're going to be pulling in some serious IPs in short order. And I think that Sony is intimidated by that. They're rightfully intimidated by that. And they're clearly pleased that the CMA is going to be looking into this further, but I don't think that they really have a leg to stand on here. I don't think that there's going to be, any real objection raised by the CMA. I look forward to eating my words in a couple of weeks' time when the Activision Microsoft deal is off.
Oh man, I'm in two sort of trains of thought with this. On the one hand, I think Sony should go fuck themselves because they've been doing it to Microsoft for years.
Yeah, it just makes no sense to be, kind of crying about the fact that Microsoft is taking a big exclusive IP when they've been sat on so many. Historically, Sony's had some fantastic exclusive titles.
Yeah, and so from that perspective, I think it's sour grapes, and I think they really need to almost have a long, hard look at themselves and be like, guys, we're being very hypocritical here.
Jim Ryan, right? He's the spokesperson for PlayStation. I think that he just really needs to kind of get a grip and keep quiet about it now. He's coming off very much as like a petulant, whiny teenager sort of thing about the fact that he doesn't get his games anymore.
Yeah, and all it's doing is it's making Sony PlayStation look weak. Phil Spencer, if he's got any sense, will see the blood in the water and know that he has all of the cards in his hand now.
I'd love to see a Sony project where they try and actually rival Call of Duty in response to this. I think that that'd be great to see.
I'd love to see it. Do I think it will happen? Probably not, in all honesty.
No, I don't think that there's a huge market for it outside of Call of Duty.
No, exactly. And this is where my second train of thought comes in, really, because on the one hand, I think Sony are being very hypocritical, but on the other hand, to my knowledge, there's never been an exclusive battle like this. It's one thing saying, okay, something like a God of War is exclusive, AAA single player title, it's going to have its audience, it's going to do incredibly well for the console, it's going to be a USP for said console, but in terms of pure revenue, it is going to do a tiny fraction of what the Call of Duty franchise will continue to do for the coming years. Because that franchise is so huge.
It's embedded. Like, everyone knows what Call of Duty is. Someone's heard of Call of Duty.
Exactly. Even people that don't consider themselves gamers will own Call of Duty or FIFA. They're the two games that everyone knows. Everyone's played them. You get other titles that sometimes creep in, like most people have played a Grand Theft Auto title in their life. I'm making very general statements here, of course, but most people that have consoles or have had access to consoles will have played one or all three of those games, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think makes it slightly different is the fact that, using God of War again as the example, that was designed, built and made as a Sony exclusive from day one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Call of Duty originally started off as everyone. It has made its name on every platform.
Yeah.
And is now, as a result of this merger, takeover, whatever it is, potentially going to become exclusive to one.
Tough titties, Jim Ryan.
It is kind of tough titties, because if they were that desperate, they have the money too. They could have done it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The other thing that gets me about this is Phil Spencer's even given them commitment for at least the next 6 years. He's honouring the licenses they already have. He's committed to 3 years after that. There is absolutely no reason to believe that he won't then commit to more after that, because he's not stupid. He can probably get a nice little license fee out of Sony to be able to play the Call of Duty games on their console, you know, or even a cut of the revenue maybe, because it's owned by... I don't know how it would work, but there's so many options that he has. And that's why I think that he's almost playing a bit of a blinder here, because I'm still of the mindset that the CMA investigation isn't going to affect the sale. I think it's still going to go through. I'm probably jinxing it, but I'm fully confident that's going to go through. So I think that, I don't know if it's Jim Ryan specifically in this instance, but I think Jim Ryan, Sony, whoever's talking, needs to just shut up and get on with it. Like you say, focus on your own games, get that shit sorted, get Bloodborne on PC. Very important, that one. If you do that, then I'll be on your side, Jim Ryan.
That's the priority right now, yes.
Yeah. If that's not number one priority, then I don't know what you're doing.
That should have been the statement, like, yes, we're very sad to see Call of Duty go. They're pushing the desperation button here. They're like, but we are releasing Bloodborne on PC.
Yeah, or better still... We're very sad to see Call of Duty become a Microsoft exclusive. The shame about this is we've now lost the budget for the PC version of Bloodborne. Oh, I'd change my tune quickly if they said that.
Oh my god, can you imagine? Because of this whole Microsoft acquisition, the Bloodborne PC, but it was just on the verge of getting the wheels on, but no, don't have the funding now.
It was right there. It was right
sorry,
there.
Gamers. Sorry, gamers.
I would personally go to Phil Spencer's house, because I know where that is.
Burn it down.
No. Oh god, no. I know I'm sensible. Beg. I get on my knees and beg the man, please.
All right.
Give Sony their fucking Call of Duty so I can play Bloodborne on PC, please.
I thought you were going to say, I'm sensible. I would just poison his water supply.
Oh, yeah.
No. I would just get on my knees and just beg the man.
Exactly.
Please.
Poisoning the water supply is the last, if he says no.
Yeah, then, on your way out, sort of thing.
Exactly.
As you hop the gate, sort of thing, just before.
All joking aside, though, I do think that PlayStation should just be quiet, let the investigation run its course, accept the decision, whatever it is. Because if I were Phil Spencer and I'm getting bitched at and moaned at, I'm less likely to want to give you license rights, whatever, further down the line. I'm more likely to be a bit of a knob because you're taking the piss, in my opinion, publicly as well, might I add.
Right, he's going to do it out of spite.
Maybe it's showing me up as being petty, but I'd certainly think about it if I were Phil Spencer. Interesting, I think, to keep it as a recurring as it develops, because it is an interesting one. But it is kind of flogging a dead horse at the moment until more detail comes out, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're just waiting for more of that at the moment. It just sounds like, really, basically, this whole thing was no news.
Yeah.
So the next article I have up, I found from Giant Bomb, and this is quite an exciting one for all you Sims lovers out there. James, put your hands up in the air. You ready for this one? Are you sat down? You are sat down. I don't know why I asked you that. I mean, we are doing this over a call, but I do see you sat in your chair right now.
Hey man, you got to quit watching me. I've told you about that.
Anyway, on that note, The Sims 5 could soon be announced, even as soon as next month. So The Sims 4 launched back in 2014, and it came along with a bunch of expensive and pointless expansion packs and additional content, as well as a handful of drip-fed new features. But fans are already clamouring for Sims 5, according to Giant Bomb. According to journalist and industry insider Jeff Grubb,
great name,
The Sims 5 is on the way and will be officially announced in October. He believes that the unveiling will almost certainly happen in the Behind the Sims Summit livestream, which takes place on October 18th. Do not expect to be playing it soon, the game is still a very long way off, he adds. The Sims 4 is also due to go free to play on October 18th, so right on the announcement of Sims 5, they're going to get a bunch of people hooked on playing Sims 4 and looking for the next best thing.
I mean, yeah.
James is just... he doesn't give a shit.
Right. So
I'm just looking at him right now, and he is just honestly just couldn't give a fuck about Sims.
So for context, so for a bit of context in this, right? The Sims is fine. It's an absolutely fine game. I know it's got a huge fan base out there. I just happen to think it's incredibly average, right? I played a bit of Sims 1 when I was a kid. Bunch of hours in it, but, and that was pretty good fun, to be fair. A little bit of Sims busting out on the PlayStation 2. Shout out to that game, because that's quality. But really, aside from that, I could not give a flying fuck about this. But no, you say people are looking forward to it, and I'm sure they are.
No, I think that the Sims players go hard, the ones that are actually into it. Those expansion packs aren't just sat on the shelf, not being bought. Kind of, it blows my mind as well, I got to be honest, because, Sims is a game that I like to play. I could probably play for maybe a couple hours before I got bored and never picked it up again for a year or two.
Yeah.
But the fans that are really into it are absolutely picking up on these collection packs, and I've got no doubt whatsoever that The Sims 5 is going to be absolutely flooded with expansions as well. I'm just wondering how they're going to be delivered. Are they actually going to be sold as individual titles, or is Sims 5 getting a battle pass where you, I don't know, pay like £5 every season or something like that, and you get the next string of items?
The thing about this is I don't think they will go battle pass, for the simple reason that, for whatever, and I don't get this, but the facts are the facts. People in their droves go out to buy an individual expansion pack for The Sims. It's fact that
absolutely
happens.
Yeah.
As a result of that, I don't think they'll battle pass it. I think they'll continue to do expansions. I think it will, in my opinion, continue to be utter bollocks. I think the thing that lost me, I'm full disclosure, I didn't know there was a Sims 4. I thought they'd still just been flogging Sims 3 all this time. But Sims 3, I believe it was, had expansion. There was one called like a holiday expansion where you got some clothes. There was one where it was the pet expansion where you got a cat, maybe a dog, don't know. Never played any of these. I'm being very judgmental, but, I don't care. It's the fucking Sims. And then, then wasn't there one that was like a special... It was, I want to say Sabrina the Teenage Witch or something like that. They did like a special...
They've done lots of tie-ins. They've even done like IKEA tie-ins where you can buy like IKEA furniture and stuff and whack it in your Sims. So.
Is that
100%, man. And there's like a H&M accessories bundle as well.
God, it's worse than I thought it was.
Yeah,
what
man.
the fuck is this?
They're absolutely rinsing those expansion packs. It's kind of as you described though. There's a handful that are kind of like they add a cool new feature. You actually get pets, or now you can go to university, or it expands the game in some way. But a lot of them are like just literally kind of a couple more pets or a couple more outfits or different stuff for your home. And all it is really just an excuse to hold back the content in the OG, in the base title,
Yeah.
So
this is what gets me, right? Years and years ago, when Oblivion released their first DLC, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, the first DLC they did was some armor for your horse for £2.50 or something like that. They got slated for that. And for me, this is the same thing. If you're just getting an extra sun lounger or an extra hat, it's not fucking worth it. And do you remember the days when an expansion pack was actually an additional campaign or an actual addition to the game? I mean, look at The Witcher 3. The Blood and Wine expansion pack is basically a new campaign on a new part of the map, wonderfully crafted, curated, lovely missions, beautiful.
To be fair though, I mean, Witcher was a bit of an outlier there with that quality of DLC at the time that was actually released.
Now, admittedly, I'm not a Sims fan, in case that wasn't fucking obvious from the discourse here. But this just doesn't excite... I don't think this would excite me that much even if I was a Sims fan, to be honest with you. I don't see how the franchise can grow much from Sims 4 to Sims 5.
Like I said, they're really not my sort of game either. I wouldn't play them for too long. But I do agree with you. I think that a lot of the people that I speak to that have played Sims seem to think that it's getting progressively worse. So yeah, I don't think that there's going to be a big furore in the group of people we know looking forward to Sims 5. I must say though, James, I for one am looking forward to all of the creepy sex things, all the creepy sex mods that come out of Sims 5. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this underground kink community, but there is some absolutely filthy mods for The Sims. It goes well beyond removing the censor feature. It gets real dicey.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what all the internet perverts do with The Sims 5. I reckon EA is probably already factoring that into their sales.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that was a thing, but the second it came out of your mouth, I was like, yeah, that's going to be a thing. Yeah, of course.
Sounds about right. Someone just had to drop the censor bar. They were just that bit too curious.
Yeah. It must be that language. Talk dirty to me in
Yeah.
the Sims language. Schmeck. Sounds like Dutch, weirdly.
It does. It has kind of like, it has a ring of a fair few different European languages, but I absolutely hear Dutch in there predominantly. Anyway.
It's got a name, hasn't it, the language? Is it Simoleon or something?
No, I think Simoleans is
the currency,
isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
It definitely has a name, though. And it's not gibberish.
No.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it is fucking gibberish, but it's not called gibberish. Oh dear. Let's move on from this fucking average game, Will. Come on.
Moving on to the third and final article of the episode, the Nintendo Direct happened. 101 farming simulators and a plethora of JRPGs later, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was announced. So that is the long-awaited Breath of the Wild follow-up. We finally have a name, and it releases on May the 12th, 2023. How are you feeling about that, James?
Firstly, I'm a little surprised it's that quick.
I honestly thought this was much further away. Agreed.
Like, don't get me wrong, they announced it. Well, it was some time ago they announced that.
Yeah.
And, you know, the rumour and innuendo around it was that it was going to be a sort of Majora's Mask style in terms of taking the assets of Breath of the Wild and making it more macabre. But this, I didn't see the Direct, but this sounds more like it's a new game. Is that the impression you got from seeing it, or?
So, looking at the trailer, I mean, all you do really get to see is Link running around a bit, climbing a vine up a wall, holding onto a block that is levitating in the air, and then falling and flying on a glidey thing in the sky, really. So
Breath of the Wild,
kind of very yeah, exactly, yeah, very kind of, you know, things that people are going to be very familiar with seeing in Breath of the Wild.
Does it look the same graphically?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of those scenes that I described, they could, for the most part, just be out of Breath of the Wild, really. I really do think that although this does have a different title, this is going to be pretty much the same kind of thing. I had a great time playing Breath of the Wild. I think that it was a really well curated game. It really opened up my expectations for open world titles after that. And in a lot of ways, it actually hasn't been surpassed in terms of exploration, I think, just given the level of traversal and the different means that you can achieve that. So I guess my hopes for this are really that they introduce different arrays of powers, more varied move types, as well as maybe a bit more of a slim down climbing system. I'm sure one thing that you'd love to hear is that this game doesn't have breakable weapons.
That was going to be my question.
That appears to be yet to be confirmed. I think that, you know, it really depends, you know, whether they listen to the fans, which couldn't be further from what Nintendo are typically like, or if they actually go for it in this time and they sort of streamline some of the features there and then I guess focus in on some of the new features that they'll be including in this title.
Yeah, man, it'd be interesting to see what they do with it. I'm wondering if the reason that the release date is potentially quicker than we thought is because maybe they are using a lot of the same assets. If you're saying it looks the same, that would make sense to me a bit more. In terms of how I feel about this, I'm not particularly enthused about it right now, but I like to think that in the coming months I will be.
It might even inspire you to pick up Breath of the Wild if you've got the time.
Well, that's it. And in my mind, I'm going to do that. Because I'd like to have, if I can get Breath of the Wild completed before the new one comes out, it might just give me enough invigoration to then get on. But how about you, Matt? I know that you were way more into Breath of the Wild than I was.
Yes, I am, and I think that this will absolutely encourage me to finally get on and complete it. I think I'll probably just kind of boss rush it at this point. Around Christmas time, I've usually got quite a lot of free time off, so I'll be probably working my way through that in anticipation of Tears of the Kingdom. Okay, James, I think that's probably enough gaming news for one episode. I think it's time to move on to the Games Challenge.
So, Will, Arborea, how did you get on, man? I've been looking forward to hearing about your thoughts on the game. So, shoot, what did you think? How did you find it? Tell me some stories.
Weave me a picture, paint me a tapestry.
Spin me a yarn, man. Let's
chalk me a yarn.
Put words and have them come out of your mouth hole about Arborea.
So, I'll start off by saying that overall, I did really enjoy Arborea. I thought it was a really fun game to play throughout the week. It incorporates a lot of the things that I like in various video games. So the fact that it has kind of Souls-like style combat in terms of a quick step, a dodge. It doesn't have stamina consumption as far as I'm aware, but it does have, you know, systems that are very familiar, very difficult bosses, also multiple phases to bosses and things like that. So, you know, all round, it really did tick a lot of boxes for me.
Nice.
With that said, I unfortunately did not complete Arborea. The score remains at 2-1.
Where did you get to?
So I did manage to kill kind of what I would consider as the kind of the first bad guy.
Gobok.
Yes, Gobok, that's right. Yeah, I got to level 3 of Helheim, and I believe that there is actually only 5 levels of Helheim. I believe that there is a final boss that's called something like Jotun, and I believe that he is actually the sort of the final boss of the game that I didn't actually manage to get to. But finishing off the game, my stats were 99 toughness, 22 strength, and 20 focus. I went all in on toughness, baby.
Oh, wow.
Oh my god, I had HP coming out of my ears. I had like 800 fucking HP.
Damn.
Like, it was insane. I was just tanking bosses.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I figured you might find it. I wasn't sure what you'd done with it. I assumed that you would think that toughness was the bitch route and like we'd probably focusing on focus or strength or something. So there's, I should start off by saying there are 3 main stats in the game, which are toughness, strength, and focus. Toughness kind of very much affects your defenses as well as your life bar. Focus has much more effect on your mana or your magic bar, as well as things like mana regen rates. And then you also have the strength class, which is kind of a tiny bit of health again. It also does affect your primary weapon damage. At one point in the game, I had an ability that gave me a shield on my kill. I also had another ability that gave me health regeneration whenever I took a hit, obviously, which was negated by the shield. So even if I was in negative health, as long as I had the shield, I was essentially just regenerating health while I was standing there. So the mobs that were released while you're fighting the boss, they just didn't phase me at all.
I was going to say, particularly in the Bug Queen, you just focus on the queen bug.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's one of the first bosses that you fight in the game. And I also had an ability where there was a 4% chance every hit to regenerate my bongo, which is, it's basically your Estus flask for the game. But in this game, it's a fucking crack pipe, right? Or like a weed bong
It's
or
a bong,
something.
yeah.
It bubbles as you huff it.
Yeah.
And there's a big sign next to it when you pick it up that says for medicinal purposes only. So of course, the first thing I had to try was what happens if I just wolf all of it? Do I like pass out and die? Nothing happens.
And what's the guy that sells them to you called, Will?
Oh, is it like Morgoid the Stoner or something?
Grom da Stoned.
Grom da Stoned, yeah, that's right, yeah. And like, he's got like big Rasta dreads and like the Rasta hat on. Like, you smell this one? He like actually goes like kind of Jamaican style as well.
They all are. If you actually listen to them, they all are pretty much
Jamaican. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Yeah, I mean, there is that. They all kind of have that slightly Jamaican style of speaking, which is slightly problematic, I think, if you do interpret it that way with the Jamaican accent, because that's a sign of lack of intelligence is what they're doing. Because as you discover, as you continue down the storyline, the main bad dude, or rather the main bad dude that appears there at the beginning of the storyline, as he actually uses this hat, which he has stolen. He's stolen a hat.
A magic hat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a magic hat. It gives him more intelligence, more insight into his surroundings, and he actually slowly, as the game progresses, stops talking like a troll.
Yeah.
So there is a slightly problematic element there, that they all sound like Jamaicans until they start getting smart. But I think that just to go into a few more of the kind of aesthetics of the game.
Well, before you do that,
I'm
going to pick you up on a few of the points you've already made.
Okay, go for it.
I had a completely different interpretation of the game mechanics than you did. First of all, I believe you are correct. I don't think you were very far from finishing at all. My understanding, I thought there was only 3 levels of Helheim, then the boss. But it might be 5. I can totally believe that. But to your point about strength giving you extra weapon damage and things like that, health, toughness being the health build and focus being the mana, that's not how I interpreted it at all. Each weapon, each weapon type is assigned to one of the stats.
It is, yes, that's right.
So are the abilities as well. So I thought it was more a case of you can sort of customize your builds around that, because I used focus. I was a focus build because my favorite weapon was the double blades.
Oh, do you know what? That was one of my favorites as well. I really like the double blades.
Other weapons I liked were all from the focus class. So you had the whip.
The whip is great for range. It's good for taking on groups of enemies.
And the legendary whip you can get is really good as well. And there's another focus weapon that I forget what it is right now, but it's also really good. I can't remember what it is, but the double blades were my main jam. And the focus abilities were sort of focused around increasing your symbiont damage and giving you bullet time when you dodged and things. So I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
And the only thing I had outside of that was the ability you can get so that Rata, your little fairy companion, throws grenades at people for you every so often randomly.
That's right, yes.
And that one's so good. But yeah, so I never really picked up on the fact. I mean, obviously, toughness would give you more HP than the other ones. Strength would give you slightly more damage, but I never really picked up on that mechanic.
So yeah, you can absolutely specialize in that way, and it would have benefited me too. I just thought, to play this on the safe side almost, I was really, I really was hoping to complete this title. I thought I could really do with a lot of health. I'm tired of losing my trolls to enemies and things like that. So this is a roguelite title. The game begins. You are a troll who is chasing another troll who stole the Hat of Knowledge. You eventually wrestle it off of him, reclaim the Hat of Knowledge for yourself, and you then turn into the kind of mini boss bad guy of the game.
The guy who you're meant to assume is the main antagonist, yeah.
You then start yourself as a new troll, and you are now hunting for Gobok. What happens is this game is every time you die, as in most roguelites, you actually have to restart again. And as you progress through the game, you earn a currency called Very. At the end of each stage, you're able to deposit your Very to safekeep it in case you do die. Once you die in a stage, it will retain a certain amount of your Very, and you can upgrade how much it retains. Even if you haven't deposited it in between levels, you can still take back about 5% of it, which isn't very much at all.
Better than nothing, though.
I think I had it up to about 15-20% by the point that I was playing it.
Pretty decent.
So Very is a currency that's used to buy yourself upgrades as well as appease the gods. And by appeasing the gods, if you give them enough Very, they will provide a new batch of trolls who you will then get to pick from one of those to be your next character in the line. Likewise, if you don't appease the gods, they will give you a crappy bunch to pick from, and they will have negative traits such as hearing voices or not being able to tell what element the enemies are.
Oh, I never got that one.
Things. Yeah,
is that colourblind?
It's colourblind.
Yeah, I would never pick that one. Yeah, I did see it.
Never.
No, not at all. Some of the negative ones actually aren't that bad though, if I remember correctly.
No, I mean the hearing voices one just appears to be a bit of weird background noise sort of thing.
And you don't even get that much.
No, and we kind of talked a little bit there about elemental damage, so that's a very big part of this game.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what did you think of the elements and how it's incorporated in?
I really liked it. I thought that the kind of the chain of the weaknesses made a lot of sense. I don't know how to feel about fire being weak to darkness. I kind of feel like darkness should be weak to fire. Struggling to think of a situation where light doesn't beat dark other than like fantasy shit. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's because it's so dark, Will, that it drowns out all the light.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to rationalize that sort of thing, and that's the way it makes like a nice, neat circle, because there is a diagram of all the elemental interactions, which is just a cycle, really. I like the fact that you could pick up the crystals that you could infuse to your weapon to change its element. I like the fact that you could pick up 2 crystals, combine them together to make a super element, and then infuse that into your weapon, and that would give you the elemental damage as well as a few different perks and buffs to the weapon.
Really cool
like
mechanic, I thought.
Ignore 15% armor per attack. There's some really, really cool weapons and weapon effects there.
Yeah, and the other thing that I thought was really cool about that mechanic was you could, if you got a legendary weapon, say, and you didn't like the sub perks on it, as you described, you could actually reset the perks by you could have the same element, just reset it, and it would give you new perks for that weapon, which I always thought was really cool.
I think the interactions and the fact that you're able to mix and match, the fact that you're able to stack elemental effects, and then while they're being affected by lightning, that you can then switch to, say, a fire weapon, lay on some fire damage as well, just to make everything stack, worked really, really well. One that really kind of sticks in my mind was the lightning teleport ability that I had. I had an ability where you can just zip around, essentially. You can blink around as you're fighting. You're invincible during that period while you're teleporting.
And it damages enemies if you move past them, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And there was quite a memorable moment where I was kind of just essentially switching between, I would do a zip, and then I had, I think, a lance, which is like a really long weapon that actually grows as you do attacks. So it gets longer as you attack, which is such a cool mechanic. So I was hitting multiple enemies at once, and you regain mana per hit on the enemy. So I was able to just kind of teleport / hit 3 of them, teleport / hit 3 of them, just zip around, barely took any damage whatsoever. And yeah, there was some really cool stuff you can do in that game. We touched just a little bit there on some of the other abilities outside of the weapons. A teleport was amazing. The telekinesis ability was really cool as well, being able to like Jedi force push away.
I personally enjoyed the shield as well.
Do you know what? I didn't use the shield much, but there was one moment where I used it against an enemy that was weak to whatever element that I had, and I was surprised at the amount of damage it did. I didn't actually think that it was going to do active damage. I thought it might, reflect certain attacks and things like that. I didn't think that it was just gonna kind of do an AoE as well.
I found that really useful, but not that I really engaged with that sort of weaponry too much. I was more of a straight melee guy.
The launcher and the bugs roll were two of the abilities that I didn't get on so well with.
Yeah.
I found the bugs roll one quite difficult to control. You essentially just turn into like a giant woodlouse or a pill bug and roll along the floor. And then, yeah, the launcher didn't find particularly useful. It was more the fact that I really missed the extra maneuverability that the teleport gave you.
Yeah.
So once I had that, most of the time, if I could, I would have 2 teleport abilities, one with one element, one with another, and I would just rinse and repeat those. After you've upgraded yourself a little bit, you can have 2 weapons and 2 abilities on yourself, as well as 4 different inventory equipment slots. And I tried to make sure that all 4 of my main slots, weapons and abilities, were different elements, all of them.
I was going to say the strat I always used to do was get one that's obviously 2 weapons that are the weakness of the 2 elements that you get given as your enemies, and then have a third one that's neutral.
But I found it a real big benefit having multiple weapon and ability slots, because that then essentially just gives you the biggest repertoire of elemental damage that you can use to your advantage.
Absolutely. And just while we're on the subject of weapons quickly, you mentioned that you went for a toughness build. Did you use strictly toughness weapons, or because I think the lance that you mentioned earlier was a strength weapon, if I'm right?
So for the weapons, much like the abilities, I wasn't really looking at what they had the best affinity with. I was literally going with weapon that I like the moveset of, like the double blade. I like the scythe. I like the lance.
Scythe, that's the other one I was thinking.
The scythe was a really cool one. Yeah. There's probably, all in all, about, over 10 different weapon types in the game.
Yeah, loads.
You can do things like charge attacks, and that will affect different weapons. The hammer does a massive AoE if you do the charge heavy attack. The sword, if you mash the light attack while he does the wind up, you kind of pump up your weapon so that when you do stop mashing, he will do a much more damage per hit after you've hit the button a bunch of times before he actually releases.
Yeah, that move is obscenely OP in early game.
It's really powerful, but I found it really annoying because I was constantly, through button mashing and my unfamiliarity with the game to begin with, I was delaying all of my attacks unnecessarily because I just wanted to swing. And I just eventually learned to only use the heavy attack on the sword because you can't charge those, and it does quite a decent amount of damage. So I just wanted to pick up a few more things about the game. So it's clearly made by a smaller team. It's a slightly lower budget game than some of the titles I've been playing recently.
How dare you?
I mean, there is absolutely a bunch of charm in this game that more than makes up for any jankiness or sort of like slight visual quality qualms that some people might have about a title like this. But honestly, I tend to look past those absolutely. I think that this, as I just said, it's got an absolute ton of charm. I think that the voice acting can be a little bit squiffy at times, particularly the fairy. I wrote down here, because I had to make a line of this, the fairy literally sounds like she's read each line separately in the booth, out of order, without context, after being locked in a room without any social contact for a year, whilst being drip-fed acid.
Unfortunately, you're not wrong. I think you can turn her down, though.
You can turn her down. You can turn her dialogue to either rarely speak or off. I kept it on rarely.
Yeah.
But if anything, I didn't find it too annoying. I just found it weirdly amusing. It genuinely feels like she's reading each word with a different personality intended. It sounds like some sort of like a voice acting challenge as opposed to an actual believable character.
Yeah, again, you're not wrong. I love this game, but I won't defend that.
Rata's quite cool in terms of some of the, the little charmy bits around her. Have you noticed that she puts on loads of weight as you fill her up with the Very?
And as you unlock more inventory space, if you fill your inventory with Very at the max inventory, she gets more and more big. Like, that doesn't stop.
I'd noticed that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you start upgrading your inventory, her capacity for obesity increases.
Yeah. And I think it might just be me, but I'm pretty sure she starts looking more and more unhappy as well. Because she's like, I'm being your pack mule, you motherfucker.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did notice that. I definitely noticed that she did appear to be happier at the start of the game, but I think the fact that I also, through one of the upgrades, I turned her into a fire element, so she'd spew fire. I think that also made her look a bit more evil and demonic as well, so it was a little hard for me to tell on a first playthrough. But, you know, cool if so. I do like the fact that she would appear more grumpy at having to lug around all your shit. I also like the fact that when you do finish the level, she vomits all of the very into the machine as you pull the thing. She doesn't just like pull it out of her ass or like out of her backpack or something. She just straight up pukes it in.
Yeah, a little bit bulimic.
Yeah, it's concerning. One thing I noticed, and this was just purely through fucking around with the controls. Have you ever just spun the stick really fast for quite some time? Because you do a ballet pirouette. Yeah. And does it serve any purpose? Is it an attack, or is it just in there? Is it?
I mean, you might be able to incorporate it into the combat somehow. I don't know. I never really.
I was just thinking. I mean, I did try and do like, you know, a spin into an attack, and I couldn't notice any distinction between the moves that I was doing. So
I mean, if you've got a quick step, why do you need a pirouette for?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Cool though.
There was a lot of cool references in this game as well. The animations in the game obviously were bound to get quite repetitive every time you land into a level, every time you depart on your journey and things like that. So they've actually introduced quite a few, I'm not sure whether they're randomized or they just kind of depend on what sort of level you're at in the game. But they've added different animations. So one that I picked up in particular was, as you fall into the dungeon, the typical one is you kind of fall face down into the ground. Yeah. Another one that you do is like the classic superhero landing. Yeah. Another one that you do is the way that Trinity lands in The Matrix when she's in her leather biker get up. You know, the troll does the same pose sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they clearly had fun making this game sort of thing. Yeah, little things like that absolutely add to that. I also noticed that the game keeps a tally of your 5 best trolls. You know, the ones that have collected the most the ones that have progress further enough into the game. When you go to that, the option to interact with it says press F to pay respects. So that's obviously a nice little Call of Duty reference in there as well.
F in the chat,
appreciated.
F in the chat.
F in the chats for the lost. Arnus, Globok, god damn it, all good. Well, not Globok, but Arnus, god damn it.
Oh, Globok was a good guy in the tutorial until he put the hat on.
Until he gained the knowledge of the hat, yeah.
And his boss fight's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So his boss fight, I suppose we should go into that. By this point, he is no longer a troll. He is suspended on the ceiling, he has massive punchy arms, and you have to slap him about a bit until he hits phase 2, where he then becomes kind of like a giant troll, and he's able to switch between the elements that he uses. So he goes between, I think it's bio, lightning, fire, and ice.
I think it's all of them, yeah.
And that was at that point where actually having 4 different elements at my disposal really came in useful, because I was able to just vary up my attacks based on what colour he turned into.
Yeah.
I had some real close calls with him, but I think I managed to do him first try.
By the time you get to him, he's kind of not disappointing, but a bit of an anticlimax, because you're so strong by then that typically it's not that bad.
I was very glad that he got a phase 2.
Yeah.
That was cool to see.
Especially because the phase 1 was kind of, the attacks were easy to avoid. You just had to hit things around the outside of the room to knock him off the ceiling, right? So
that's right. Yeah, he would get a force field around him, and you needed to destroy the batteries around him to take down that, so you could attack him. Something interesting about this game. So I got pretty desperate. I was fairly certain that I wasn't going to complete it, and I got to say, I played it today, and I had a good feeling that I actually was going to complete it at 1 or 2 points, especially getting to level 3 of Helheim. I knew that there was 5 levels. I was feeling pretty good about that one. It was a kind of a shock death. God damn it, Arnus. You won't be forgotten, but god damn it. What I wasn't expecting was that there is no wiki for this game. There is no speedruns on YouTube for this game. There's not even a subreddit for this game. Like, there's not even a walkthrough for this game. Like, is it really that sort of not well known? I was really not expecting that this was such an underground game. I don't truly believe that it is an underground game.
Yeah, I mean, the game is probably only a year old.
Yeah.
So it's got that, but
I would have certainly expected someone to have speedrun it by this point.
Well, I mean, for whatever reason, I just don't think it's done that well, which I think is a real shame, because I actually think it's a really good game. But
I'm with you there, 100%.
But, I found it by pure chance, because I just saw it as in the Steam sale when it first came out, and it was 10% off, and I thought, damn, that sounds really cool. I'm going to take a punt. And it was good. So yeah, it's a bit of an odd one.
Quickly, before we move on to Helheim, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Erd tree. I'm going to call it the Erd tree. It's like the Elder tree. It appears to be your sort of
your
like...
god tree.
Yeah, your god tree, basically. I'm not convinced that the tree's a good guy, man. I just feel like there's something sinister going on there. I feel like things are not as they seem. You're not just trolls getting very. You're clearly doing something for an advanced race, so... I think that there's more to see there, and I certainly will be completing this game, perhaps even before the next podcast.
Yeah, well, I believe that true completion is New Game Plus Plus.
Yes, I've heard that, yeah. Maybe not then. I would hope that I would have at least gotten to New Game Plus by the time the next episode rolls around.
Who knows? I might even pick it up a little bit and see if because we got to essentially the same level.
Yeah.
Which is the interesting thing. Let's talk about Helheim, because I would like to get your thoughts on it, because I personally didn't like it.
Me too.
Because you go through the whole game in this lovely sort of fantasy-esque underground sort of nature aesthetic.
They are drip feeding you the sci-fi though, to be fair. There's like fissures in the earth where there's bits of neon and shit.
Yeah, and that's all very cool, but then for it to go full space station at the end.
Yes, it does go full
with
space
no
station.
transition. You literally walk through a tunnel and then it's like Helheim down here. It's like, okay, sweet, jump down, full space station.
Yeah, it literally, you go from killing Gobok, walking down a rocky tunnel into...
with a lot of keep out signs, which I thought was
so
funny.
weird, yeah. Loads of keep.
Yeah.
Nothing this way, wrong way,
Yeah,
turn
exactly.
back.
Great stuff. Love it.
Honestly, the aesthetic wasn't the thing that bothered me. It was the alarm system. So the alarm system in Helheim works that whenever you do any of the actions that you've been doing for the rest of the game, like collecting very, attacking enemies, being seen by enemies, all of these things will contribute to an alert level. And the increasing amount of alert level you get, there'll be loads more countermeasures in the level as you explore it. So I didn't like that aspect of things because it felt like it was hurrying me through the levels and it was limiting how much I was actually able to do in the levels.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're the same as me from what you just said, but I found that I started speed running through and not killing things. I just wouldn't engage.
100%. Yeah, I started sprinting through the whole level to see what was ahead of me before I did anything.
Exactly, whereas before I was killing everything, exploring properly, like getting all the chests, clearing all the curses to get more abilities and things like that. When I got to Helheim, I was like, right, no, I'm finding the exit. I'll then, from the exit, find the key or whatever it is, because you have to go to another place and unlock it or something.
Yeah, so there's force fields over your exit in Helheim and you need to destroy the generators.
That's it, yeah.
to do it. And in order to destroy the generator, you need to actually fight kind of like a bit of a, not a mini boss, but you need to fight an elite enemy in order to destroy it.
Which, if you've been speedrunning the level and all the mobs are following you around, becomes a pain in the arse.
Yeah, absolutely. And they also don't tell you at the beginning of the level just how many generators you're going to need to destroy. You need to find the exit or one of the generators before it'll tell you. Helheim feels a little bit bullshit. It feels like you should sprint through it to kind of make sure you've seen everything in the level and then make a decision about how you're going to budget your healing items. So that did force me to play differently, much like you described.
Yeah.
You can activate, so there's no more tree roots in Helheim. There are these hacking panels that you can do, which function the same as a tree root, i.e. it summons waves of enemies that you have to defeat, and you either have to survive a certain amount of time defeating the enemies, or you have to just defeat waves of enemies.
Yeah.
Once you've done that, that reduces your alert level. These things sound quite cool on paper, but they become very annoying when you're kind of trying to do a mixture of rush through the level while getting as many items as you can and collecting your very, but you're also trying not to make the game impossible for yourself by having loads of countermeasures go off, loads of traps, loads more enemies.
Tough enemies as well, might I add.
Real tough enemies.
Yeah.
By that point, they're just straight up mechas and robots and shit, and there is for sure a step up in the amount of health that these guys have. Unfortunately, beaten with 2 levels remaining, but I had an absolutely fantastic time playing it. Wanted to say thanks for recommending it. Thank you for also buying this one for me. This is a gift from James for a birthday past. And I finally got round to playing it for the podcast, for the challenge. You know, I did check the price of the game, and I think for the price that you pay for that...
£15, isn't it?
Yeah, £15 to like £7-8 on sale.
Yeah.
It's an absolute steal for £7 or £8. It'll definitely keep you busy for, I would say, at least sort of at least 20 to 30 hours if you're just going to complete the sort of the main game and get good enough and pump your skills.
Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, man, because as I say, I've got a lot of love for this game. I'm very impressed with how well you did, if I'm honest. There was a part of me after I'd set the challenge last week that sort of thought, should I have set up to Gobok? Because that's a bit more reasonable. But, you know, the fact that you got 2 levels away from the end, as I say, that's basically the same as the furthest I've got to, and I've put 80 odd hours into it. So I think you can be very pleased with yourself, man. I'm sorry that you weren't able to finish it. It was always going to be a slightly tall ask. But as I mentioned last week, you know, you could have...
Hey, it's a challenge for a reason.
Exactly,
man.
but you could have done it in 5 hours. You know, it's one of them games. You literally, it could have been, you know, you could have just been like, right, I get this combat. I understand the mechanics super well. And you could have done it. And it's a shame you didn't, because I was looking forward to hearing about the final boss and how you beat it. And whether it was actually any good or disappointing or what, because I don't know that either.
With all of that said, I think it's time to reveal my gaming challenge for you this week. I promise, this isn't a revenge one.
Oh, that means it's going to be shit. Oh, no.
No. See, I think this is quite an interesting challenge, because this will be one of our first challenges that isn't a completion.
Oh, hello.
It is a stipulation run. A stipulation
baby.
challenge. Your challenge this week, James, is... catch a fat W in Apex Legends with 400 damage accrued during that win. You look genuinely worried, James. It's filling with me with joy.
I know what the first bit means. I don't know what the second bit means.
Okay, so basically, you need to win a game of Apex, but that's not enough.
Right.
You need to have done at least 400 damage in that game.
Okay.
So, my thinking on this is, and the reason why I've added that stipulation is, it's not hard to end up in a game with 2 absolutely amazing players and absolutely get carried. I don't want you to get a kill count, because again, I think that would be quite unfair, because you could be shooting someone and someone could steal your kill, for instance. What I want you to do is 400 damage, because I feel like that takes into account you'll be playing an active part of the team. 400 damage really isn't that much, provided you're going to be winning the game and coming into contact with a lot of other teams. So I think that it is achievable, and just to specify, this is a BR win. This is not an arena win as well. This is a BR game mode win.
Well, man, I wasn't expecting that. That's completely out of left field, that one. Yeah, I don't know how hard this is going to be, so I can't really make a judgment. I mean, I suck at Battle Royale games, so that's going to be a challenge. A challenge that I will give my all to, but yeah, I don't know. That's going to be a tough one, I think.
It's doable.
Oh, it's doable for sure. I could get it in my first game. You never know.
Apex is a game that I enjoy quite a bit. You know, I play it on my own with randoms as well as with friends, but it's a game that we have played very little of with each other. And I think that this challenge is kind of going to be your make or break as to whether you actually enjoy playing Apex.
No, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I'm a little bit on the fence with Apex at the moment as is. So yeah, I agree. I think this will either make me hate the game or it will tip me over to the love side. It's out of my comfort zone. It's good. It's a good challenge. So yeah, I'll give it my all. Hopefully keep the 100% record alive.
Well, good luck, man, and I'm looking forward to catching up and seeing how you're getting along during the week. So I think we've come to the end of the podcast now. Once again, it's been great catching up with you this week. As we take back, we're just going to have a quick look at what we learned this week. What have you learned this week, James? What have you learned this episode?
So what I've learned this week is that, and this kind of is an apology as well, I learned that Thymesia, a game that I've been very much hyped and looking forward to and have been playing and, you know, have really enjoyed.
Talking about episode on episode.
Exactly. It's actually pronounced Thymesia. So, you know, I learned that, which is awkward given how much I've sort of hyped this game up and then I can't even know the fucking name of it. And outside, I also learned that inserting robots into sort of early 18th century France, I believe it is, might have been early 19th century France, is actually quite a cool look.
It really works.
There you go.
It really, really works.
Yeah.
It just works.
And who'd have thought a robot in a wig would look kind of cool? How about you, man?
This episode, James, I learned another lesson from you, another little interesting tidbit, that Clefairy was actually due to be the flagship Pokemon as opposed to Pikachu, which I think is really interesting, and I'm forever going to be inserting Clefairy in front of Pikachu now whenever I see him on a poster, just to kind of imagine what that would have looked like if we were living in the brightest timeline, let's describe that as. Pikachu is definitely the evil one. It's those little eyes, the beady fucking eyes. Okay, James, I'd just like to wrap up and say a big thank you to all of our listeners. We very much enjoy week on week taking a look at our subscriber count, taking a look at our viewer account, watching the globe light up with listeners. You know, it's something that we really appreciate. The support, the engagement that we have on social media, it's all fantastic, and it really does kind of keep us going, and we're really looking forward to putting out more episodes for you guys.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that sentiment. It's all very, very humbling. The nice comments and the support we're getting has been wicked, and you know, seen a few of those 5-star ratings be creeping in as well. So just massive thank you to everyone that's been a part of this journey so far, and we look forward to continuing it with you all.
Yes, smash those 5-star ratings. It makes all the difference in terms of promoting the podcast, and we very much appreciate that.
And do tell your friends.
You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode. We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, challenge highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
Or you can find me at Hoodafunk on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Hoodafunk.
And you can also find me on Twitter at Mr. Bames, or on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM.
With all that said, thanks very much, everyone. Enjoy your week, and we'll catch you next Monday.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.